Today's lesson is just focusing on interpreting bar graphs and histograms. When we take a look at bar graphs, it shows categorical data, which means that there are gaps between each bar and they represent a different category. If we take a look at this first example, or this first chart, it says that a game company asked people at the mall which game console they owned. They recorded the results in the bar graph below. Use their graph to answer their questions. So we can see by looking at the number of people corresponding to the type of console that the PS3, when asked, 7 people said they owned it. The Atari, 9 people said they owned it. Xbox 360 had 10 people, and PS Vita would have been 4 people. For number 1, it says, how many people owned the PS3? Well, if we look at this bar, we can see that that would be a total of 7 people. Number 2 says, did more people own an Atari or a PS Vita? Well, when I look at the bar graph for an Atari, I can see that 9 people own that, and the PS Vita had only 4 people. So more people owned the Atari. Number 3, it says, which console did exactly 9 people own? So looking at our number of people, 9 people owned the Atari. So all I'm doing for each of these questions is I'm looking at the bar graph. Really, you could do most of this without needing my help, but just in case, I'm going to keep going through them. Number 4 says, what is the difference in the number of people who own a PS Vita and the number of people who own an Xbox 360? So 4 people own the PS Vita, and then 10 people owned the Xbox 360. And we wanted to know, what was the difference between the number of people? Well, difference means subtraction. So we would do 10 minus 4, which means there's a difference of 6 people. Number 5 says, what is the combined, that's the key word, combined number of Xbox 360s and Atari's owner? So we said 10 people owned an Xbox 360 and 9 owned an Atari. So if I'm to combine them, I would add, which would give me 19. Which console did the largest number of people own? Looking at the bar, you can see that the Xbox 360 was the most popular. Number 7, which console did the fewest number of people own? So looking at the bar graph, it's going to be the shortest bar. That would be the PS Vita. Number 8, how many more people owned a Atari than owned a PS Vita? So how many more people owned an Atari, which was 9, than a PS Vita, which was 4? That means we want to find the difference between those two numbers. So the difference between 9 and 4 is 5. I'm going to scooch it down a little bit so you can see the remaining problems. Number 9 says, how many fewer people owned a PS Vita than a PS3? So PS3 had 7, PS Vita we just said was 4. So the difference between that would be 3. Did fewer people own an Atari or a PS Vita? Well, PS Vita was the amount, or had the least amount of people owning it. So the PS Vita would have been fewer than the Atari. On the next page, we are now going to be matching bar graphs. So we're determining whether graph A, B, or C best represents the information in the table that I gave you. For number 1, you can see that we have favorite colors, which are blue, green, orange, yellow, and red, and the amount of people who responded that those colors were in fact their favorite color. First off, let's just start with one color at a time. So blue being 1,000. If I want to see which graph corresponds, blue should be representative of this number. But in graph A, blue seems to have 5,000 people respond to their favorite color, so no, that doesn't match the data in the table. Part B, it says blue had 2,000 people, so that also doesn't match. For C, I can see blue has 1,000, green appears to have 10 grand, which matches, orange is 6, yellow 2, and red 5. So C is a perfect match. Number 2. We have names Adam, Bill, Cody, Dan, and Ed, and points that correspond to each person. So we want to see which graph matches the data perfectly. Well, for Adam, there should be 30 points. Taking a look at option A, it appears to only have 15 points for Adam, so that is not a match. B has Adam corresponding to 10, which also doesn't match. But C does have 30 points for Adam, 45 for Bill, 40 for Cody, 5 for Dan, and 15 for Ed. So C is a perfect match. Number 3, Faye, Greg, Hannah, Jane, and Kelly have lived in a different amount of states for each person. Faye lived in 1, Greg in 8, Hannah in 4, Jane in 9, Kelly in 10. Looking at the tables, which one matches it perfectly? Right away that I can see Faye has 1. The only graph that has Faye living in 1 state is A. So A is the perfect match. Number 4 has sales and months. So we can see the months are in the x-axis and then the months are along the y-axis. January corresponded to 1,000. If you look at the 3 options, the only one that has January corresponding to 1,000 is A. So A was the perfect match here. Next, we're going to be interpreting histograms. Now, histograms represent numerical data, where bar graphs, as I mentioned earlier, was categorical data. So bar graphs had gaps between each different category. A histogram will have no gaps. So I want you to make a note of that. It's no gaps. So this represents a range or an interval of numbers. The way that I would read this right here is all the numbers between 0 and 2. So 0.5, 1, 1.5, 1.9, all the numbers between 0 and 2. Here we would go from 2 to 4, all the numbers that range in between. Here would be 4 to 6, 6 to 8, 8 to 10. Now, students sent, or most students sent between how many texts? Well, looking at the bars with the histogram, we can see that this is the tallest bar, and it corresponds to 5 students who have sent between 8 and 10 texts. So the answers are 8 and 10. Number 2, how many students sent between 8 and 10 texts? Well, between 8 and 10 is this bar right here. If we take a look, it says 5 students. Number 3, how many students are represented in this histogram? Well, we just said there were 5 students who sent between 8 and 10 texts. If I take a look here, it corresponds to 4 students for 6 to 8, 4 students for 4 to 6. This appears to be 3 students for 2 to 4 texts, and then 1 student for 0 to 2. So if I want to know how many students are represented in the histogram, I have to add 1 plus 3 plus 4 plus 4 plus 5. And that would give me a total of 17. Number 4, if a student sent 2 texts, which bar would they be added to? So that's a very good question, and that deals with how to read it. Normally we read it from left to right. So this is going to be 0 to 1.9. This is going to be 2 to 3.9, 4 to 5.9, 6 to 7.9, 8 to 9.9. So it's included on the left-hand side. So 2 students would correspond to the second bar right here. The one that ranges from 2 to 4. All right, next, we're taking a look, let me get it situated here, at the histogram below to show the quality of chocolate pieces, or excuse me, the quantity of chocolate pieces per bag of trail mix. So this histogram is written a little bit differently. Instead of having a number on the left and reading it 0 to 1.92 to 3.9, it's actually included the range. So this is 0 to 19 pieces of chocolate, 20 to 39 pieces of chocolate, 40 to 59 pieces of chocolate, 60 to 79 pieces of chocolate, and 80 to 99 pieces of chocolate. So number 5 says most bags had between blank and blank pieces of chocolate. Well, because it said most, we want to look at the tallest bar, which would be here. That ranged between 60 and 79 pieces of chocolate. How many bags had between 60 and 79 pieces of chocolate? Well, the amount of bags corresponds to 8 for 60 to 79. How many bags of trail mix are represented in this histogram? Well, we just said there were 8 for 60 to 79. It appears to be 1 for 80 to 99. And then it looks to be about 5 for 40 to 59, 7 for 20 to 39, and 3 for 0 to 19. So if I want to know how many bags of trail mix are represented in the graph, I would just add. And that would give me a total of 24. Number 8 says, if a bag had 59 pieces of chocolate in it, which bar would it be added to? So 59 belongs to this third bar right here, because it's from 40 to 59. It's included in the third bar.